Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought all in all that, of course, I would give my little fight review of the very, very big fight, at least in my opinion, overall, that was happening this weekend. And of course, that was the boxing match between that of Tyson the Gypsy King Fury and that of the number one WBC contender, Mr. Dillian Whyte. And this was going to be a very particularly interesting fight. And the reason why that is because not only, were we really going to see how great Dillian Whyte was overall, someone who really had been waiting in the shadows somewhat for a bit to get his opportunity at a title once more. Because of course, the last time I believe that he had got an opportunity, for a title, or the last time he fought a legitimate 100%, one of the top five or top three heavyweights in the world, was of course when he fought Mr. Anthony Joshua, and he was not successful in winning that fight. Well, of course, this was his other chance. He did overall get a great amount of victories over some of the other top contenders. He ended up getting a victory over Alexander Povetkin. He ended up getting a victory over Joseph Parker. He ended up getting a couple of victories over the tough Derek Chisora. He also ended up getting a victory over the very tough and once upon a time undefeated Mr. Oscar Rivas. So, of course, Dillian Whyte and Tyson Fury, it did make a whole lot of sense. We were not only going to see how truly great and how good Dillian Whyte was, and if he truly was prepared for his title shot, but also how truly great Tyson Fury was. Of course, all in all, we did get to see him not only once upon a time beat the great Vladimir Klitschko and also beat, of course, the decently great Deontay Wilder. And when I say great, I'm not talking about a person that, of course, was the most skilled fighter that I've ever seen. But Deontay Wilder, combined with his athleticism and the skill set that he did have, he was a very decently dangerous fighter. No doubt about it. And unfortunately for Dillian Whyte, and for those of you, of course, that do not know the result that ended up happening, Tyson Fury overall did get the victory, and he ended up pretty much getting the victory with ease in this fight. He ended up, in my opinion, pretty much dominating the majority of the rounds. I thought that he pretty much clearly won almost every single round. If there was a round to give to Dillian Whyte, maybe it would have been the first round, but even then, I think it would have been a little bit debatable. It seemed that Dillian Whyte in the first round that he tried to throw Tyson Fury off overall by going in the southpaw stance. He could have maybe tried that a little bit more, but I don't think that it really would have worked anyway. And the reason why that is because I've never really seen Dillian Whyte fight in the southpaw stance, at least the fights that I've seen him in. Now, a certain amount of people, maybe you want to correct me if I'm wrong about that, but the majority of the time when I see Dillian Whyte fight, he's usually in a right orthodox stance. And Tyson Fury is a person that not only can he fight a right hand fighter, he can also fight a southpaw fighter. And this is what I said also, in my view, was going to give Dillian Whyte a little bit of problems in this fight, was Tyson Fury's multitude of dimensions that he has to his game. Tyson Fury, when you take a look at him, he's not a person that he's not a person all in all. It's almost like that saying, never judge a book by its cover. Tyson Fury, when it comes down to it, he never looks overall super duper in shape. He never looks like a person all in all that would have an A grade skill set. He looks a little bit awkward, but basically what he does, he gets the job done. And Tyson Fury is a clear A grade fighter. He's not only a great fighter, he's an all time great fighter. I don't think all in all that Tyson Fury would be as successful as he is today, especially being how big that he is, unless overall, he had an extraordinary skill set. And that's exactly what Tyson Fury has. Tyson Fury overall proved in this fight that not only overall was he the better fighter than Dillian Whyte, he pretty much proved all in all that there really was not even a single comparison. And that's pretty much overall, what I kind of guessed. I thought maybe in certain rounds, maybe it would have been a little bit tougher, but Tyson Fury overall pretty much outboxed Dillian Whyte with ease. I think that Dillian Whyte overall was maybe feeling the power of Tyson Fury a little bit in the early part of the fight. He overall seemed very tentative overall to throw. Tyson Fury did sometimes as well, but one thing I will give Tyson Fury a lot of credit for, I don't think I remember one very good flush punch, at least to the head, that Dillian Whyte was really able to land in this fight. Tyson Fury's head movement, especially for his size, is really unbelievable. Tyson Fury, when it comes down to it, he is an excellent mover. He has excellent feet and excellent foot speed overall for his size. He's also not a person that is just going to stand there and take shots. He will use his feet. He will move in and out, kind of like what you see Terrence Bud Crawford do for that of the welterweight division. And of course, certain people that are going to say, oh, was that you comparing their skill sets 100%? No, but you also know that if you looked at my channel in the past, that I don't really like to compare the skill sets of heavyweights and welterweights because I think that their body dimensions are just completely different. So they're going to look usually completely different. But Tyson Fury is an extraordinary fighter. I think that he has a great defense. I think that he has very good offense. He can fight very well on the back foot, as he proved in this fight. He can fight very well on the front foot. Tyson Fury can almost fight in almost any sort of style that you want him to fight in. And Tyson Fury, basically what his sort of style here was, it basically was going to have to be basically what I, or he basically did what I said he was going to have to do, which basically means overall that he was going to have to do kind of the same thing as what he did with Derek Chisora. At certain moments, there was going to be times where he had to pressure Dillian Whyte. At certain times, all in all, there was going to be times to where he overall had to back up and move in and out and use his feet. And Dillian Whyte, it was very clear, and I already said this, basically in my fight, my fight prediction, that Dillian Whyte was mainly going to try to land that banger of a left hand and also especially that overhand right. But Tyson Fury obviously was very, 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 very well prepared for that overhand right, because every time Dillian Whyte tried to throw that overhand right, it really was not even close to landing. It just is what it is. Every time Dillian Whyte threw that right hand, he almost looked like Deontay Wilder when he throws those windmills pretty much out of nowhere. Dillian Whyte basically had no chance in this fight whatsoever to land that right hand. Almost every single time Tyson Fury, he would either back up out of the way, he would stick a jab in his face, he would sometimes also counter with a left hook, which really threw Dillian Whyte off guard. I don't think that he was preparing for the left hook as much in this fight. I think that he was mainly preparing for a left jab and, of course, a right cross when it came down to it, which, of course, you wouldn't expect that from Tyson Fury. But that just shows you overall how multidimensional Tyson Fury is. Basically, Tyson Fury, he can basically almost hurt you with any punch that he throws. Every punch that he throws in his arsenal pretty much is elite, in my opinion. He can hurt you with an uppercut, which eventually, of course, he did with Dillian Whyte, because Dillian Whyte is not very good at avoiding the uppercut. And on top of that, Dillian Whyte really does not have a good chin whatsoever. It just is what it is. I mean, I'm not surprised that Tyson Fury ended up getting the knockout that early. A lot of people, they always criticize Anthony Joshua, mainly because he's on a higher plateau and a higher profile. They mainly criticize him for usually having a weak chin. Dillian Whyte, in my view, is the person that really has the Amir Khan chin of the heavyweight division. Now, don't get me wrong. That's not me saying that Anthony Joshua is someone all in all that, has an elite chin. But Dillian Whyte probably might have the worst chin that I see there at the heavyweight division. It just is what it is. It's very, very rare when I've seen Dillian Whyte take a very, very good punch, and he's overall usually to take it very well. It just is what it is. And the uppercut, it usually is one of Dillian Whyte's weaknesses, because when he overall does duck down, he overall usually does not usually have the type of defense to defend an uppercut very, very well. It just is what it is. He ducks his head down. Sometimes overall there will be nothing, protecting that chin of his. Sometimes he'll put his arms up a little bit too high when it comes down to, because of course he's expecting a cross, but then the opponent will set him up for a right uppercut. And that's exactly what Tyson Fury did. And Dillian Whyte didn't see it coming. And once it did hit, Dillian Whyte was completely done. The fight was over. It just is what it is. There was also a certain amount of people, some of the channels that I also tend to review, like that of Adante's Boxing Nation or Boxing Ego, or some of the other channels that I tend to review. They basically, of course, were trying to say that Tyson Fury didn't want this fight against Dillian Whyte because Dillian Whyte is the more complete fighter than that of Deontay Wilder, and, basically that this would be a harder fight. That's why he didn't want the fight. I think that if you basically take a look at it and say, well, you know what? Dillian Whyte, he has more weapons at his disposal than Deontay Wilder, so that's just going to be a tougher fight. You can't always take a look at fights like that. Now, understandably, sometimes, all in all, and the majority of the time, when a fighter does overall have more weapons than someone, when it comes down to, or at least if it looks that way, then of course, yes, you're usually going to predict a harder fight for that fighter than someone who's a little bit more one-dimensional, when it comes down to. But at the end of the day, if we really take a look at Dillian Whyte, and let's just compare him to that of Deontay Wilder, does Dillian Whyte really, really, really have better weapons than that of a Deontay Wilder? I know a lot of people, they say that he has a great jab, and he has a great left hook, and he has a great overhand right. I've barely seen any of those punches land in this fight. Deontay Wilder's right hand, when it comes to not only his power, but also his accuracy and his timing, that power and his overall accuracy in that right hand that Deontay Wilder has, at least when he's at his best, it is certainly better than any of the punches that Dillian Whyte can land overall in his arsenal. So sometimes when it comes down to it, sometimes, yes, you may take a look at it, and a fighter may appear to have more weapons than that of the other fighter. But does he really? Now, at the end of the day, well, maybe what you could argue is that maybe Dillian Whyte, that he looks a little bit more skilled than Deontay Wilder in certain areas. But I'm not sure if I would ever really debate that Dillian Whyte is actually more of a dangerous fighter or ever on the same level as a prime Deontay Wilder. Even when I thought Tyson Fury clearly won the fights, all three fights against Deontay Wilder, one thing I'll at least give Deontay Wilder credit for is this: at least in 2 out of 3 of those fights, maybe even in all 3 of the fights, is what you can say about Deontay Wilder. He left a mark in every single one of those fights. I don't think Dillian Whyte made one mark in this fight except some of the dirty moments that he had in this fight. And don't get me wrong, there's just some roughhousing that goes along here and there. but some of the elbows that he was trying to rub up against Tyson Fury when it came down to it and trying to cut his eyes and his eyebrows, Dillian Whyte sometimes has pulled that bullshit before. It's not the first time that I've seen him get over emotional and overall try to basically pull out some dirty tricks. And some people may say, well, Tyson Fury has proved in the past that he's a little bit dirty as well. Why have you mentioned about that? Well, Tyson Fury, what he does is necessarily something that's called dirty boxing. And sometimes will he stick his claw in your face? Sometimes will he, even put the forearm, kind of in your face? Yes, but what Dillian Whyte was doing, in my view, especially in some of those rounds, were completely unacceptable. He clearly was overall going for behind the head with very, very hard shots. Some of the shots that Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder would land in their trilogy, when it came down to it, there were certain shots behind the head that maybe would land here and there, but they usually weren't done with malice. They weren't usually done on purpose. Mainly what Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury were trying to do is that mainly they were just trying to get each other in the side of the ear or in the side of the head, basically overall get them, with those little punches, basically in the clinch when they overall had the space in the room. Dillian Whyte, basically what he was doing, especially with his forearm and Tyson Fury's throat the whole entire time, it basically was what like Adrian Broner was doing against Sean Porter, basically so he could survive the fight. And I could tell that Dillian Whyte, pretty much by the 5th and 6th round, he pretty much overall was buggered out. He pretty much overall was completely exhausted because Dillian Whyte overall does not have an A-grade gas tank. A lot of people, of course, like to make fun of Tyson Fury's physique. They always like to say, take a look at his love handles, take a look at the fat and all that sort of stuff. That's just some people's physique. And at the end of the day, Tyson Fury, he has never really been known for stamina issues, if you know that. Tyson Fury is a person that can jog for miles. He's a person, all in all, that has excellent conditioning mentally and physically. He's a person that can overall move around the ring for the whole entire fight. There's never been a fight, all in all, where Tyson Fury has really tired and gotten exhausted. And that's a big part of the reason why he's undefeated. Tyson Fury is clearly the most skilled heavyweight of this generation. He not only is clearly the most skilled heavyweight of this generation, he is the greatest heavyweight of this generation. And he is the greatest heavyweight, in my view, ever since that of Lennox Lewis. He is the greatest heavyweight ever since Lennox Lewis. Now, of course, we're also going to talk about, where Tyson Fury overall will go from here. But just to talk a little bit more about the fight, what do I think Tyson Fury did right in this fight? Basically, to sum it all up, I think overall that the jab was very, very good. And I knew that his jab was going to be better than Dillian Whyte's because I don't think that Dillian Whyte has ever really had a great jab. And I think that all the jabs that he tried to land on Tyson Fury, I think mainly that Tyson Fury could usually see coming from a mile away. And it just really didn't have any potency overall with his jabs. When Tyson Fury flicks that jab out there, no matter who he's facing, you can tell that there's some potent overall intent behind them. Because Tyson Fury throws a jab correctly. When it comes down to it, he throws a jab correctly. He throws it with intent. He puts force behind that jab when it comes down to it. And he snaps it in, snaps it out, or he snaps it out, snaps it back in very quickly. That's why it's very hard to hit that of Tyson Fury. And combined with that, of course, he has a good 85-inch reach, and he's 6'9". So it just is what it is. But Tyson Fury, not only did he have a great jab, he was going to the body a little bit early as well. He was moving around very, very good. He was tying up Dillian Whyte, which would frustrate him. He basically took away his main two weapons, which were going to be that overhand right and that left hook. And as soon as those two weapons were done, Dillian Whyte basically had no chance to win the fight. At least, yes, Deontay Wilder, he somewhat had his right hand taken away, but Deontay Wilder with that right hand is more dangerous than what Dillian Whyte has ever been with any of the punches in his arsenal. It just is what it is. And that's why Deontay Wilder, even in the third match or even in the first fight, where I still thought Tyson Fury clearly won, he still was able to give Tyson certain hell in some of those rounds. Because yes, Deontay Wilder, he's not a person that, is an A-grade skilled fighter. He's kind of like George Foreman. He's not a person that has a multitude of game plans. He has one plan, and that's pretty much it. Yes, he has only a few, weapons in his arsenal, but that one weapon overall that he has with that right hand, it is more deadly than a lot of the other weapons overall. Some may even be combined, overall in the sport of boxing. It just is what it is. That right hand that Deontay Wilder has is one of the most dangerous weapons, not only in modern boxing, but overall in boxing history. So I don't think that Dillian Whyte was ever going to be on the level of a Deontay Wilder. It just is what it is. Now, maybe if they were to fight now, maybe Dillian Whyte could beat him. But if Deontay Wilder catches him with that right hand, it's over. Because Dillian Whyte has no punch resistance whatsoever. It just is what it is. But all credit to Tyson Fury. He did very, very well. But basically, all in all, what I will say is that, and the last thing that I'll say that I think that Tyson Fury did very well in this fight, he also used that jab, not only overall to jab him in the face, but also to blind Dillian Whyte. And I said that he would need to do that. That was another tactic that he used in the Derek Chisora fights, where basically he would stick that lead hand out there, double jab in Dillian Whyte's face, which he did usually very decently well. When it came down to it, got a decent jab in his face, maybe jab to the body here and there, blind him overall, and then maybe throw an uppercut to the body or a hook or an uppercut to the head. And eventually that's exactly what he did in round 6, and that is what led to Dillian Whyte's demise. So it just is what it is. But anyways, congratulations to Tyson Fury. I thought that it was a very excellent performance. And Tyson Fury, of course, said after this fight that more than likely this will be his last fight. I'm not 100%, 100% at least 100% believing it, but we'll see. I'll know what Tyson Fury does. It is overall basically, his choice. But I do hope that Tyson Fury does stay around at least to face maybe Anthony Joshua and Alexander Usyk. But I think the way that Tyson Fury looks at it, to be quite honest with you, I think that he says that, or the way that he looks at it, he pretty much says that if Anthony Joshua is not going to win that fight, it's really not even me worth coming back. On top of that, I believe that he's having another child with that of his wife. Your family is important, I get it. When it comes down to it, your wife probably wants to spend time with you, and of course you want to be with your kids and you want to be with your family. Your wife, without slurring your words or being too brain damaged a little bit later on. And on top of that, you could retire on top of the world, being the clearest best heavyweight of your era and the greatest heavyweight, in my view, ever since that of Lennox Lewis. And overall, you could retire undefeated. But if Anthony Joshua, let's just say for this, if he does end up defeating Alexander Usyk in that rematch, I do think that Tyson Fury more than likely will fight him. But if Alexander Usyk ends up beating Anthony Joshua in a rematch, I think more than likely Tyson Fury will probably leave boxing behind. But we'll see. I'll know what ends up happening. But anyways, another topic, of course, is that of Tyson Fury versus Francis Ngannou. And of course, for those of you that don't know who Francis Ngannou is, of course, overall the heavyweight champion of the world in the MMA world, in the UFC world, the best heavyweight overall in the world today in the MMA world. Now, more than likely, if I had to guess, that fight overall would probably go to boxing. And if Francis Ngannou overall actually thinks, in my view, that he can beat Tyson Fury in a boxing match, he is sorely mistaken. And in my view, it probably would be best for Francis Ngannou overall to live out some of his other dreams in the MMA world and the UFC. But hey, it's up to him. Understandably, the UFC does not pay anywhere near as good as boxing. If Tyson Fury and Francis Ngannou did have a fight, it more than likely would somewhat be of a super fight, someone like that of the Floyd Mayweather Jr. versus Conor McGregor fight, or somewhat of a lesser version of it when it comes down to it. So it's up to Tyson Fury, it's up to Francis Ngannou. Personally, I don't think that it would be good for his career, because when fighters, especially MMA fighters, that get beat in boxing, when it comes down to it, they're never the same. And I don't think that Francis Ngannou would be ready for the type of beating and the type of movement and the type of power punching that Tyson Fury overall would have. I don't think all in all that he would be prepared for it. I don't think that he would be prepared, for the type of movements. I don't think overall he would be prepared for the type of punches, for the type of angles. I don't think that he would do very well overall against Tyson Fury at all. To be quite honest with you, I'm not really even quite sure how Francis Ngannou would do against someone like a Dillian Whyte in boxing, because MMA and boxing is just completely different. But it is what it is. Anyways, that's pretty much about it for this video. But I hope that we get to see Tyson Fury maybe become the complete undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. We'll see all in all what ends up happening, or we'll see all in all at least if he'll give it a shot. It'll be very interesting, but more than likely, like I said, if Alexander Usyk ends up beating that of Anthony Joshua, I think Tyson Fury more than likely will leave it be. And overall, if it comes to that of Anthony Joshua winning, then I think Tyson Fury may return. But more than likely, who do I see winning that rematch? I think Alexander Usyk, in my view, I just think that he might be a little bit too much for Anthony Joshua. But we'll see. I don't know what happens. I just think that he's the completely wrong style for that of Anthony Joshua really to beat. Because Alexander Usyk, he is not overall just some slob overall who's going to overeat himself like that of an Andrew Ruiz. Not only that, he's also someone with elite footwork and elite A-grade skills. Andrew Ruiz is someone that's a decently skilled fighter, but he's no Alexander Usyk. Not even close. It just is what it is. So anyways, that's pretty much about it for the video today. I will be doing more videos, more than likely on Tyson Fury, because we all know that a certain amount of these channels, we all know that they hate Tyson Fury with a burning passion. So more than likely, certain narratives are going to come out sooner or later. But we'll see what happens. Anyways, that's really about it for today. Thanks so much for watching. I'll talk to you all later.